Hi and welcome to Camille's Country Corner. I am Camille, and on today's menu we have a birthday celebration. Today is my husband's birthday, and so we will be making two different dishes that is his favorite. One is beef enchiladas and the other one is the salted caramel cupcakes. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get baking and cooking. I am so glad you stopped here today. Let me show you what you're going to need for our first recipe. All right, for the salted caramel cupcakes, you will need some brown sugar, some regular white sugar, flour, baking soda, baking powder, some cinnamon, a few eggs, a couple of sticks of butter, one of those is for the frosting, some salted caramel, that's to add inside of our cupcakes, some chewy caramels for the top. We've got some milk and some sour cream. Let's get started with this wonderful recipe. All right, to the bowl, we are going to add one of the sticks of butter. Now the butter should be at room temperature. I'm gonna add our 1/4 of a cup of just the regular white sugar. And we need 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Okay. Let's go ahead and cream that together. While this is creaming together, I am going to crack 2 eggs and 1 yolk. These are just large eggs. Okay, what you didn't see is I added way too much egg to my bowl, so I had to take some out. I'm supposed to have 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk. I actually did that in reverse, and I put the egg yolk separately. So then I ended up having to take out some of the whites. All I did was add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. The recipe doesn't call for it, but I think all cakes should have some sort of vanilla in them. All right, so I'm gonna add these eggs one at a time. Or just dump them like I just did, because it both came out at the same time. All right, what I'm looking for in my batter is to see if I have any brown sugar clumps. Right now, I am missing the stone inside of my brown sugar. It's a stone that keeps your brown sugar moist at all times. So what you do is you heat this stone up, and if you look on Amazon or just Google it, they have these brown sugar stones. And if you don't want to buy one, you can always just use a piece of an apple. Does the same thing. I just like the stone because it lasts a really long time before I have to soak it again in some hot water. And my brown sugar never clumps, and it could be in there for months before I use it. All right, just a little tip. Let's get back to the recipe. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You can use any flour here. The all-purpose works the best for this particular one, but you can definitely use some gluten-free. All right, and then we're going to have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Let me see, because I am not following this perfectly. We need 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, or a little more in my case. I should have gotten 1/2 teaspoon measurement, but this is the one I seem to be able to always find. So that one is always readily available. And it's funny because I'm usually the one that puts away all the dishes in my house. So if it's missing, I'm probably the one that misplaced it. All right. So I put in 1/2 teaspoon of each baking soda, baking powder, and the cinnamon. And I'm going to go ahead and add, let me grab a scraper. Okay. So we're going to alternate the flour mixture and the milk and the sour cream. So I'm going to go ahead and add about 1/3 of the flour. I'm going to add a little bit of the milk. And we're going to add about 1/2 of the sour cream. Now I have a half a cup of milk, and I have a 1/2 cup of sour cream. I'm using full fat sour cream here. The recipe calls for full fat milk, but I never have that in my house. I always just have the 2%, or I use a plant-based milk, or well, usually it's almond milk. And then we will add the rest of our milk and the rest of the sour cream. Now it's important that all of these ingredients are at room temperature because you will get the best results for this cupcake. Now one thing I did not have on here is we need a 1/4 cup of boiling water. And I already have some on the stove, so let me grab that. And I'm going to go ahead and add that all at once as it splashes back at me. All right, let's scrape down our sides at least once. All right, let's get everything out and fill our cupcakes. All right, this recipe makes 12 cupcakes. So we want to fill these. I'm going to put 1 scoop in each. And if there's anything left, then I will add it to each one to make it all even. And I've mentioned this before, but in case you haven't watched my other videos or you're new here, I have bought these cupcake liners on Amazon. I will put that link below of where I bought them. All right, this makes almost exactly 12. I mean, it did make 12, but I have a little bit extra batter that I'm going to go ahead and scrape out of here. At this point, you should already have your oven preheating at 350 degrees. And we're going to bake these. I'm going to start looking at them in about 15 minutes. It should take about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on your oven. And I will see you right back here. And in the meantime, I have already made the frosting for this, so I'm going to go ahead and link that below. I had extra the last time I made it, so that's what I'm going to be using today, but I will definitely show you how we're going to decorate up these cupcakes. All right, for the beef enchilada portion, I am going to be doing ground beef enchiladas, and you will need some diced chilies. Today I'm using some Rotel, the Aldi's brand. I'm going to be using some taco seasonings. That's not really a traditional, and by no way is this authentic. I'm going to be using some Mexican style blend of cheeses. We need some tortillas. I'm just using some white flour tortillas today. We need some salt and pepper. We need some chicken stock. We need some chili powder and some cumin and some ground garlic, which I have not pulled out yet, but you will see me add that in the recipe. We are going to be making our own enchilada sauce. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll show you what you need for that. All right, I have my pan on a medium high. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of just a regular vegetable oil. You can use olive oil, avocado oil, pretty much any oil you want here, or you can even use butter. We're gonna let that get a little bit hot. And as soon as that gets hot, then we will add our flour. All right, it only takes a minute for that to heat up. And I'm going to be mixing, oh, sorry, I always forget to turn that light off. Going to mix our flour and our oil together. I'm making a roux. I'm gonna go ahead while that's cooking down a little bit, because that's a pretty strong flavor of flour. I'm gonna go ahead and add everything else that we're gonna need. This makes about 1.5 cups of enchilada sauce. I added a whole teaspoon of chili powder. We're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And I'm gonna add a whole teaspoon of cumin. The recipe I'm loosely going off of doesn't have anywhere near those measurements. It's way less. I like things to have a lot of punch and flavor, so I would rather that this be a bold flavor of enchilada sauce like everything else I've ever tasted. Now my chicken stock that I'm using is already salted. I pre-salted this one, so I am just going to wait and see what it tastes like before I add any more salt. We pretty much just want this to thicken at this point. All right, while we're waiting for that to come up to temperature, I am going to grab a pan and we're going to start the ground beef. Hopefully my daughter, who's editing this, edited out all of that horrible banging that I just did. Okay. Let's get our ground beef going, and it looks like our enchilada sauce is already back up to temperature. All right, this is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. All right, to my pan, I'm going to grab some onion. We're going to use about 1/4 cup of onion here. All right, so I have decided not to add any onion. I'm just going to add some onion powder and some garlic powder, so probably about a teaspoon of each. As this is cooking, I've got about 1.5 pounds maybe of the ground beef. I'm going to wait to add my rotel, or actually my diced tomatoes with chilies. Rotel is just the brand name. Until I see how much fat this is going to have in it. All right, that is almost ready. All right, I drained off all the fat from my hamburger, my ground beef. I am going to add my green chilies and tomatoes, and I'm also going to add 1 packet of taco seasoning. It's got everything that you would normally add in here, except for I didn't add it. I didn't mix it up first, so I am just going to use the packet today. Normally I have a batch already made up. It doesn't have as many chilies as I would like in it, but it's gonna work. I really need to go to the grocery store. All right, so we're just gonna cook this for a little bit. Great, let's go ahead and assemble some enchiladas. All right, let's get mixing these together. I just set down a piece of wax paper because I'm messy. And I'm gonna grab a handful of these tortillas. Not sure how many I'm gonna need yet. Gonna put down about a ladle full, maybe a little bit more of my enchilada sauce. Put it all along the bottom. All right, one thing I forgot to grab is a bowl. Another bowl that I'm just gonna put a little bit of enchilada sauce in here. And because I don't want to fry my tortillas, I'm gonna just dip them in the enchilada sauce. And we're gonna get an assembly going. So this is really hot. And then I just put them on top of the other one to get going. So I'm gonna add probably a couple of tablespoons of my ground beef, maybe 2 to 3. And then sprinkle some cheese in here. And you're just gonna roll it up. Place it in your pan, seam side down. Let me show you one more. Dipping them just makes them a little more pliable, makes it easier to roll. All right, I've got 2 going. Once I've got them all rolled in the pan, I'll show you what the next step is. All right, I think I forgot to tell you, but when I tried the enchilada sauce, and this is how recipes are made, it did not have enough spice. So I added another teaspoon of cumin and another teaspoon of chili powder. I will put all the recipes below that I'm using today with all of the correct measurements that I used for this recipe. All right. Out of my 913 pan, I'm using the big burrito shells, and I got 10, which is plenty enough for my family. You can double your batch if you want to make more. With your enchilada sauce, just top the rest of it. You don't want any spots hanging out with some white that's not covered, because those will burn or get too crispy on the edges. I actually like that part, but for video, we are going to cover it up. With your remaining cheese, now I just opened this as an 8-ounce package of the Mexican blend cheese. I used the whole thing inside of the enchiladas, as you saw. And I'm gonna go ahead and use a little extra cheese on top just to bake it, because we like a lot of cheese. All right, I am going to bake this at 400 degrees for 30 minutes. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, guys, I'm going to show you how to frost up these cupcakes and how we're going to decorate them. So I just have my cupcake. I have a melon baller. You can use a spoon or a knife if you don't have that. And I went ahead and made a small hole. And with my caramel sauce, I just went ahead and filled that hole, and then I am just going to place that right back on top. And all I used here is some salted Oh geez, you can't hardly see that. There we go. Salted caramel, Smucker's brand. All right, like I said, I had already made my frosting. Today I am just using a cream cheese frosting. There is a different frosting that came with this particular recipe. I like cream cheese frosting, it's my favorite one. So I'm gonna go ahead and use that. All I'm doing, I just realized I forgot to put the tip in there. So all I'm doing is making a swirl. Okay, I just had to refill my bag. Okay. Now, on the next step, all I did was I took some help from these little candy melts. If you don't have anything like this at your store, and these are the cutest thing, they're just tiny little, looks like chocolate chips, and they have the salted, it's already salted in the caramel. And I just placed this, it says you could do it right in the bag, but I went ahead and did it in a microwave safe bowl, and I put it in there for 30-second increments. If you don't have that, you can definitely use this topping. Just thin it out or microwave it. Actually, just microwave it a little bit, make it a lot softer. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna snip the end. I just put it in a zip top bag. And I'm just gonna make little designs on top of my cupcakes. All I'm doing is going back and forth. And then I will go the opposite direction with just a couple, just so we have a pretty pattern on top. You do not have to be a cake decorator to make things beautiful. All right, and then just to take it even one more step, so that's what it looks like so far, is I bought these Werther's Original Creamy Caramel Chews. I am not a caramel fan, but my husband is. They come individually wrapped, so you can use the rest at a later time, or you can send it with him to work like I'm probably gonna do. So I took each caramel and I cut it in half, and I'm just going to top each one of my cupcakes with the caramel. And it just makes for a pretty decoration on top of the cupcake. Just like that. All right, let me get everything plated up with our dinner and our cupcakes, and I will show you what it all looks like. All right, friends, this is what it looks like when the beef enchiladas are completely done. All right, guys, we are all done with this portion today. One thing I forgot to show you is I'm just going to add a little bit more of the sea salt. This is just some flaked sea salt. Actually, I'm using kosher salt, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be delicious, and it just kind of gives that little extra bit of saltiness to it. All right, we've got the beef enchiladas. They definitely need to cool down. I'm not going to try those. And the cupcakes are for tonight's celebration, so we're going to sample those later, but I know they're delicious because I've made them already before, and they're so good. So I hope you make these at your next party. And for decoration, all I did was scatter around some of the caramels in case anybody wants some extra. All right, guys, thanks for coming to visit me today. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Definitely hit our like button and the notification bell if you would like to see more recipes like this. And I'm sure glad you did stop by today. Have a good one.